Sometimes the safest place to hide is also the most dangerous place to be found. Rain poured across downtown Chicago, turning every streetlight into a blurred ribbon of gold reflected on the pavement. Noah Bennett pulled the collar of his beige coat higher as he hurried past the closing storefronts, clutching an old leather messenger bag against his side. Just 30 minutes earlier, he had finished restoring the fragile binding of a century-old book inside the private historical library where he worked. Hidden inside the cracked spine, he had discovered an aged envelope sealed with a symbol he did not recognize. Before he even had time to report it, a sharply dressed stranger had entered the library asking detailed questions about the same book. Noah had politely claimed he knew nothing, but the stranger's calm smile had lingered in his mind long after he walked away. Now, every time Noah glanced over his shoulder, the same gray sedan appeared at the next intersection. It never drove too close. It never disappeared completely. His heartbeat quickened as he crossed another street, with less than 5 minutes remaining before the rideshare vehicle he had ordered was supposed to arrive. His phone vibrated with a notification saying the driver was waiting around the corner. Noah rounded the building, expecting to see the familiar company logo. Instead, a large black sport utility vehicle sat quietly beneath a street lamp, with its rear passenger door slightly open. Another flash of lightning illuminated the gray sedan, slowing less than 100 feet behind him. Panic replaced careful thinking. Noah rushed toward the waiting vehicle, slipped into the back seat, lowered himself behind the front passenger seat, and pulled the door shut without looking up. He took several hurried breaths before realizing the warm leather interior felt nothing like an ordinary rideshare. Expensive wood trim reflected the dim overhead lights. The air carried the faint scent of cedar and fresh coffee. Then a calm voice broke the silence. Comfortable. Noah slowly raised his head. Across from him, seated in the rear executive compartment, a tall man in a perfectly tailored black suit watched him with quiet curiosity instead of surprise. His posture remained relaxed, yet everything about him suggested complete control. Sharp gray eyes studied every movement without urgency. Noah immediately recognized him from newspaper business articles and television interviews. Vincent Moretti, the alpha who controlled one of Chicago's most influential family organizations. Noah instinctively reached for the door handle. Before his hand touched it, a soft electronic click echoed through the cabin as every door automatically locked. Vincent glanced toward the rain-covered window instead of Noah. Outside, the gray sedan had slowed almost to a stop behind them. Several seconds passed before Vincent allowed himself the faintest smile. It was not mocking. It was not cruel. It was the expression of a man who had just confirmed a theory. "You chose a very dangerous place to hide," he said evenly. Noah swallowed hard. "I made a mistake. Please let me out." Vincent never looked away from the sedan outside. "If I unlock these doors now, those men will meet you before you reach the sidewalk." Noah turned toward the window and finally noticed two figures stepping from the gray sedan beneath black umbrellas, scanning the street with quiet patience instead of panic. None of them looked like ordinary commuters waiting out the storm. Vincent pressed a discreet button beside his seat. The driver pulled smoothly into traffic without a sudden burst of speed, disappearing into the flowing line of late-night vehicles. Noah watched the strangers grow smaller through the rain until they vanished behind a curtain of headlights. Only then did Vincent finally meet his eyes. "Now," the alpha said calmly, folding his hands together. "Tell me why complete strangers were willing to wait in a thunderstorm for an Omega they clearly did not want to lose." Vincent remained perfectly still as the sport utility vehicle merged into the steady stream of late evening traffic. Rain continued tapping against the windows, creating a quiet rhythm that made the silence inside the luxurious cabin feel even heavier. Noah hesitated before answering. He had never imagined explaining his situation to one of the most powerful men in Chicago, especially while sitting inside his private vehicle with every door still locked. "I do not know who they are," Noah finally said. "I only know they started following me after I left work." Vincent studied him without interrupting. People rarely spend an evening waiting in the rain for someone carrying nothing of value. Noah lowered his eyes toward the leather messenger bag resting on his lap. "I think they wanted something inside this bag." Vincent noticed the subtle movement immediately. "Open it." Noah carefully unfastened the worn leather flap and removed several ordinary items from inside, including a notebook, a pair of cotton gloves used for restoring fragile paper, reading glasses, and a wrapped sandwich he had forgotten to eat. Finally, he reached into the inner pocket and slowly placed an aged envelope onto the polished wooden table separating the rear seats. The thick, cream-colored paper showed its age, yet the dark blue wax seal remained remarkably intact. Vincent leaned forward slightly. His calm expression changed for the first time that evening. He recognized the symbol pressed into the wax. It belonged to Vail Holdings, a respected financial company that had quietly handled investments for influential families across the Midwest for decades. Vincent looked back at Noah. "Where did you find this?" "Inside an old history book," Noah answered honestly. "The book arrived at the library 3 days ago from a private collection. While repairing the binding tonight, I discovered a hidden compartment inside the spine. The envelope was folded inside. Before I could report it, a man came asking very specific questions about the same book. He never mentioned the envelope directly, but he knew far too much." Vincent remained thoughtful. Vail Holdings had never been connected to rare books. If their seal appeared inside a hidden compartment, someone had deliberately concealed the envelope years earlier. "Did you open it?" Vincent asked. Noah immediately shook his head. "No, it does not belong to me. I thought the library director should decide what to do tomorrow morning." Vincent almost smiled again. "That decision may have saved your life." Noah looked confused. "Why?" Vincent glanced toward the privacy screen separating the driver from the rear cabin before pressing another button. The screen became fully opaque. Only then did he answer. "Because anyone willing to follow you through downtown Chicago probably believes the contents are more valuable than the envelope itself." Noah quietly absorbed those words. He had spent years preserving forgotten letters, journals, and historical documents. Never once had he imagined that restoring a damaged book could place him at the center of something dangerous. His phone suddenly vibrated. The rideshare application displayed an unexpected message. "Your trip has been canceled by the driver." Noah frowned. "That is impossible." Vincent raised an eyebrow. "Why?" Noah turned the screen toward him. "The driver accepted my ride less than 5 minutes before I entered your vehicle. He never canceled until now." Vincent reached for his own phone and made a brief call. "Anthony," he said calmly, "find out whether a gray sedan and a canceled rideshare request are connected. Also verify whether anyone changed the pickup location remotely." He ended the call within seconds. Noah looked at him with growing uncertainty. "You think someone redirected me?" Vincent met his eyes with quiet certainty. "No." He paused just long enough for the realization to settle between them. "I think someone wanted you to enter my vehicle from the very beginning." The realization settled over Noah like the cold rain still streaking across the windows. He replayed every moment of the evening in his mind, from the stranger inside the library to the perfectly timed rideshare cancellation. And for the first time, he wondered whether he had been following someone else's plan instead of making his own choices. "You think this was arranged?" Noah said quietly. Vincent gave a slight nod. "I think coincidence is often the easiest story to believe. It is rarely the correct one." The vehicle continued north along Lakeshore Drive before turning onto a quieter street lined with elegant townhouses and carefully trimmed trees. The city noise gradually faded behind them. Noah looked down at the unopened envelope resting between them. "Then whoever did this wanted me to bring this to you." Vincent folded his hands together. "Or wanted me to believe exactly that." Before Noah could respond, Vincent's phone vibrated. He glanced at the screen before answering. "Go ahead, Anthony." The conversation lasted less than a minute. Vincent listened without interrupting, then ended the call and slipped the phone back into his jacket pocket. "Your rideshare request was not canceled by the driver," he said. "Someone accessed the account remotely and changed the pickup information before deleting the record." Noah felt his stomach tighten. "Can they do that?" "Only someone with preparation," Vincent replied. This was not random. Noah leaned back against the seat, trying to process everything. "I restore books. I spend my days repairing old paper and faded ink. Why would anyone build something this complicated around me?" Vincent looked directly at him. "Because they may never have cared about you. They cared about where you would take that envelope." A few minutes later, the vehicle slowed before the gates of a quiet estate overlooking the dark shoreline of Lake Michigan. The entrance looked more like a modern executive residence than a fortress. Soft landscape lighting, illuminated stone pathways, and carefully maintained gardens. Security cameras were visible but discreet, blending naturally into the architecture. As the gates opened, Noah realized he had crossed into a world completely different from his own. The driver parked beneath a covered entrance, but Vincent made no move to leave immediately. Instead, he reached toward the envelope. "May I?" Noah hesitated for only a second before placing it into Vincent's hands. Vincent examined the wax seal without breaking it. The emblem of Vale Holdings was perfectly preserved despite the envelope's age. Then something caught his attention. Near one corner of the paper was a nearly invisible handwritten number written in faded graphite. Noah leaned closer. "I did not notice that." Vincent smiled faintly. Most people would not. Noah carefully adjusted the reading light above them. The number became clearer. It was not a date or an inventory mark. It read simply, 37. Noah frowned. "Does it mean anything?" Vincent remained silent for several moments before answering. 37 was the private archive room inside the original Moretti headquarters. It has been closed for almost 15 years. Noah stared at him in disbelief. "Then this envelope was hidden after someone visited your family." Vincent slowly turned the envelope over once more. Something inside shifted with a soft sound, lighter than folded documents, but heavier than ordinary paper. Whatever rested inside was clearly more than a single letter. Vincent looked toward the illuminated house waiting beyond the windshield, then back at Noah. "We are not opening this inside the vehicle," he said calmly. "If someone spent years hiding it, and tonight arranging for it to reach me, then whatever is inside was never meant to be discovered by accident." Noah followed Vincent out of the vehicle, but as they walked toward the entrance, he noticed a small security monitor beside the front door. On one of the camera feeds, parked far beyond the estate gates on the opposite side of the road, the same gray sedan sat quietly beneath a streetlight with its headlights turned off, as if whoever remained inside was content to wait for whatever happened next. The front door opened before Vincent reached for the handle, and an older house manager welcomed him with the quiet confidence of someone who had worked there for many years. His eyes briefly rested on Noah, showing polite curiosity but not surprise. "Good evening, Mr. Moretti," he said. "The West guest suite has already been prepared." Noah glanced toward Vincent. "You expected someone?" Vincent removed his rain-soaked coat and handed it to the house manager. "No. I expect situations to change quickly." The entrance hall felt warm and calm, decorated with polished walnut floors, tall windows overlooking Lake Michigan, and shelves filled with carefully preserved books instead of expensive artwork. Noah instinctively studied the collection. Most volumes were first editions protected inside glass cabinets. For the first time since leaving the library, he felt a familiar sense of comfort. Vincent noticed where his attention had settled. "You are already examining the books." Noah gave an embarrassed smile. "It is a habit." Vincent nodded. "That habit may become useful tonight." They entered a private study overlooking the water. A fire burned quietly inside the stone fireplace, adding gentle warmth without overwhelming the room. Vincent placed the sealed envelope onto a large oak desk, but still made no attempt to break the wax seal. Instead, he poured 2 glasses of water and slid one toward Noah. "You should rest before making any decisions," Vincent said. Noah accepted the glass, but remained standing. "I cannot stay here." Vincent looked at him calmly. "Can you safely return to your apartment?" Noah hesitated. Images of the gray sedan immediately returned to his mind. "Probably not." "Can you return to the library?" Vincent continued. Noah slowly shook his head. Then leaving tonight would solve nothing. Before Noah could answer, a discreet knock came at the study door. Anthony entered carrying a slim tablet computer. The security team reviewed every traffic camera within 3 miles of the library, he reported. The gray sedan first appeared almost 2 hours before Mr. Bennett finished work. It never lost sight of the building. Noah stared at the screen as Anthony displayed a timeline of surveillance images. The sedan had been parked across the street while Noah worked inside, had followed him through several intersections, and had remained nearby until he entered Vincent's vehicle. Anthony enlarged another image taken from a camera positioned near the library entrance. A man wearing a dark coat could be seen leaving the building several minutes before Noah. His face remained hidden beneath an umbrella, but one detail immediately caught Noah's attention. "Stop," Noah said. Anthony paused the recording. Noah stepped closer to the screen. That umbrella. Vincent looked at him. What about it? Noah pointed toward a small silver emblem attached to the handle. The man who asked about the old book carried the same umbrella. I remember because the emblem looked handmade. I thought it was unusual. Anthony quietly saved the image for further analysis before leaving the room. Silence settled once again. Vincent finally looked back at the envelope. Someone searched for that book before you found the hidden compartment. They arrived too late. Noah slowly sat down. Do you think the stranger knew I had already discovered it? Vincent answered honestly. I think he suspected. That is why he never asked about the envelope. He watched your reaction instead. Noah felt a chill despite the warmth of the room. He replayed the conversation inside the library and realized how carefully every question had been phrased. The stranger had never searched the shelves. He had been studying Noah the entire time. Vincent reached into a desk drawer and removed a small magnifying glass normally used for examining antique documents. Under the brighter desk lamp, he carefully inspected the lower corner of the envelope again. This time, another faint graphite mark appeared beside the number 37. It was only a single sentence, almost invisible against the aged paper. Noah leaned closer and quietly read the words aloud. Open only when the Omega arrives first. The room fell completely silent as both men realized the message had not been written for whoever hid the envelope. It had been written specifically for them. Neither Noah nor Vincent spoke for several seconds after reading the faint sentence hidden beside the number. The words seemed impossible. Whoever had written them had not only expected the envelope to survive for years, but had also predicted that an Omega would discover it before anyone else. Noah slowly leaned back in his chair, trying to understand how a message written on aging paper could describe the exact moment unfolding before him. That cannot be a coincidence, he whispered. Vincent gently placed the magnifying glass on the desk. No, someone expected a sequence of events, not a specific date. Noah looked toward the shelves filled with antique books surrounding the study. If this was planned, then the person who hid the envelope must have believed it would stay hidden for years. Vincent nodded thoughtfully. Or they believed the right person would eventually find it. He carefully examined the wax seal once more before retrieving a small letter opener from the desk drawer. Instead of cutting through the paper, he slid the thin blade beneath the hardened wax with remarkable patience, preserving the seal without damaging the envelope itself. Noah watched with surprise. You have done this before. Vincent gave a quiet smile. My grandfather collected historical correspondence. He believed destroying an envelope erased half its story. The seal finally lifted away intact. Vincent unfolded the flap and slowly removed the contents. Both men expected stacks of documents. Instead, only 3 items rested inside. The first was a black and white photograph. The second was a small brass key no longer than 2 inches. The third was a folded sheet of thick paper covered in neatly typed numbers and handwritten notes. Noah reached for the photograph first. It showed 2 men standing beside the entrance of an older stone building. One of them was unmistakably a much younger version of Vincent's father. The other man looked familiar, although Noah could not immediately place him. Vincent stared at the image in complete silence. That building, he finally said, was the original Moretti headquarters before my family moved operations across the city. Noah turned the photograph over. Written on the back were only 4 words. Trust the librarian's son. Noah felt his breath catch. The librarian. His voice became barely louder than a whisper. My father was a librarian before he passed away. Vincent looked at him with genuine surprise. You never mentioned that. Noah slowly shook his head. Because I never thought it mattered. A sudden memory surfaced. As a child, Noah had often visited the old reading room where his father worked. There had been one locked cabinet his father never allowed anyone to open. Whenever Noah asked about it, his father would simply smile and say that some stories had to wait until the right reader arrived. Noah had assumed it was only a lesson about patience. Now he was no longer certain. Vincent unfolded the final sheet of paper. Instead of names or financial records, it contained columns of reference numbers connected by handwritten arrows. Most of it appeared meaningless until Noah leaned closer. These are archive catalog numbers, he said immediately. Vincent looked up. You recognize them? Noah nodded. Every historical library uses a slightly different classification system, but this format belongs to the private collection where I work. Vincent frowned. Then this is not a financial ledger. Noah traced one sequence with his finger. No, it is a map. Vincent's expression sharpened. A map to what? Noah continued studying the page until one number near the bottom caught his attention. His face slowly lost its color. This catalog number belongs to the very same book where I found the envelope. Vincent looked from the paper to the photograph and finally to the brass key resting quietly between them. For the first time that evening, he realized the envelope had never been the destination. It had only been the first instruction leading both of them towards something that was apparently still hidden inside the library where Noah worked. The study remained quiet as the significance of the catalog numbers settled between them. Outside, the rain had finally begun to weaken, leaving only a gentle breeze rolling across the dark surface of Lake Michigan. Vincent carefully arranged the photograph, the brass key, and the coded page side by side on the desk, studying them as though they belonged to a puzzle that had waited years to be completed. Noah continued examining the catalog references, his eyes moving naturally through the sequence. These numbers are not random, he said. They describe the order of shelves inside the restricted archive beneath the library. Vincent looked up. Restricted? Noah nodded. Only a handful of employees even know the archive exists. It stores private collections that were donated under special agreements. My father used to supervise that section before he retired. Vincent remained thoughtful. Then whoever prepared this expected someone familiar with the archive to understand the code. Noah slowly pointed toward another handwritten symbol near the bottom of the page. This is not a shelf number. It marks a preservation cabinet. Vincent glanced toward the small brass key. Do you believe that key belongs there? Noah picked it up carefully. The worn metal felt heavier than its size suggested, and an unfamiliar emblem had been engraved near the handle. He turned it beneath the desk lamp until the engraving became clearer. I have seen this before, he whispered. Vincent leaned closer. Where? Noah closed his eyes for a moment, searching his memory. Then the answer returned with surprising clarity. Inside the library. Vincent waited patiently. There is an old reading room that has not been used for years. Most visitors believe it is permanently closed because the furniture is too fragile. Near the fireplace, there is a decorative brass plate with exactly this symbol carved into one corner. Vincent exchanged a thoughtful glance with the photograph. Not decoration, then. Noah slowly shook his head. Probably not. Before either man could continue, Anthony quietly entered the study carrying another tablet. Mr. Moretti, he said respectfully, we received a visitor request. Vincent frowned slightly. At this hour? Anthony nodded. Marcus Vale is outside the main gate. He says he heard you returned from your meeting and wanted to personally discuss tomorrow's financial conference. Noah instinctively looked toward Vincent. The name immediately caught his attention. Vale, Noah repeated softly. The same name as the seal on the envelope. Vincent did not answer immediately. Instead, he studied Anthony's expression. Did he explain why he arrived without an appointment? No, Anthony replied. He only said the matter could not wait until morning. Vincent looked at the envelope and then toward the window overlooking the front entrance. Keep him waiting for 5 minutes. Anthony nodded and quietly left the room. Noah lowered his voice. Do you think it is the same family? Vincent answered carefully. Marcus Vale has managed investment accounts for my organization for nearly 10 years. Until tonight, I had no reason to question his loyalty. Noah looked again at the old photograph of Vincent's father standing beside the mysterious man. The resemblance between that man and the elegant businessman now waiting outside was unmistakable, although separated by decades. I think I know who the second man is, Noah said. Vincent turned toward him. You are certain? Noah nodded slowly. He looks like Marcus Vale, only much younger. Maybe his father. Maybe another relative. Vincent quietly considered that possibility. If the Vale family had been connected to his own long before he assumed leadership, then the hidden envelope represented far more than an old secret. It connected two families across an entire generation. Just then, Vincent's phone vibrated with a message from the security office. He glanced at the screen, and for the first time that evening, genuine surprise crossed his face. The gray sedan that had followed Noah across Chicago had not disappeared after reaching the estate. Security cameras had recorded it leaving less than 2 minutes before Marcus Vale arrived at the front gate. Vincent slipped his phone into his jacket pocket without saying a word, but Noah immediately understood that something important had changed. The connection between the gray sedan and Marcus Vale could no longer be dismissed as coincidence. The room grew noticeably quieter as the fireplace crackled in the background. Vincent calmly gathered the photograph, the brass key, and the coded page before placing them inside a leather document case. He then locked the case inside the study safe with practiced precision. "For now," he said, "no one else needs to know what was inside that envelope." Noah nodded. "Not even Marcus?" Vincent looked directly at him. "Especially not Marcus." A gentle knock interrupted the conversation. Anthony returned. "Mr. Vale has been waiting exactly 5 minutes." Vincent glanced toward Noah. "I need you to trust me." Noah hesitated only briefly before agreeing. "What do you want me to do?" Vincent smiled faintly. "Tell the truth whenever possible. Say nothing whenever it is not." Moments later, they entered the formal sitting room overlooking the front gardens. Marcus Vale stood beside one of the tall windows, elegantly dressed in a charcoal suit despite the rainy evening. His silver hair was neatly combed, and his welcoming smile carried the effortless confidence of a man accustomed to entering any room without invitation. "Vincent," Marcus said warmly, extending his hand. "I apologize for arriving so late." Vincent returned the greeting with equal politeness. "You said the matter could not wait until morning." Marcus nodded. "That is correct." His attention shifted naturally toward Noah. "I did not realize you had company." Noah recognized him immediately. Although the man at the library had hidden beneath an umbrella, the calm voice was unmistakable. Every carefully chosen word matched the conversation from earlier that evening. Noah felt a brief wave of tension, but remembered Vincent's instruction. He simply offered a polite smile. "Good evening." Marcus returned the greeting without any visible reaction. If he recognized Noah, he gave no sign. Instead, he accepted a cup of coffee from the house manager and continued speaking with Vincent about investment reports, charitable foundations, and business meetings scheduled for the following week. The discussion sounded completely ordinary, yet Noah noticed something unusual. Marcus never once asked a direct question. Instead, every statement quietly invited Vincent to volunteer information. It reminded Noah of the stranger inside the library. The questions had never been obvious. They had been carefully disguised as casual conversation. Noah suddenly understood why Vincent had warned him to remain silent whenever possible. Marcus finally turned toward him again. "You seem interested in old books, Mr. Bennett. Vincent mentioned that you work at a historical library." Vincent had never actually said that. Noah realized Marcus already knew where he worked. He simply wanted confirmation. Noah smiled politely. "I enjoy preserving old collections." Marcus nodded with apparent satisfaction. "Then you probably appreciate how important it is to keep valuable discoveries in the right hands." Noah resisted the temptation to glance toward the study where the envelope had been opened. "History belongs to everyone," he answered calmly. "The challenge is making sure it survives long enough to be understood." Marcus studied Noah for several quiet seconds before smiling again. A thoughtful answer. The conversation continued for another 20 minutes before Marcus finally excused himself. As his car disappeared through the estate gates, Vincent remained standing beside the window, watching until the taillights vanished into the distance. Only then did he speak. "He came here for one reason." Noah folded his arms. "To see whether I was here." Vincent nodded. "And to learn whether we had already opened the envelope." Noah frowned. Did we convince him otherwise? Vincent walked toward the study without answering immediately. Once the door closed behind them, he looked at Noah with an expression that carried both admiration and concern. "You convinced him of something much more dangerous." Noah blinked in confusion. "What do you mean?" Vincent opened the security monitor and replayed footage from the sitting room. Marcus had smiled throughout the visit, but on one frame, lasting less than a second, his eyes had shifted past Noah toward the document case resting on the study desk before the safe had been closed. Vincent paused the recording. "Marcus never came looking for the envelope," he said quietly. "He came to see whether you recognized him, and I believe he now knows that you did." Vincent closed the security recording and remained silent for several moments, allowing the implication to settle naturally between them. Noah looked once more at the frozen image of Marcus Vale, whose polite smile now seemed carefully rehearsed instead of reassuring. "Then everything changes," Noah said quietly. Vincent nodded. "Yes. Until tonight, Marcus only suspected someone had discovered the hidden envelope. Now he knows exactly who that person is." Noah drew a slow breath. Which means he will expect me to return to the library. Vincent walked toward the window, overlooking the peaceful shoreline. The storm had completely passed, leaving the moon reflected across the calm surface of Lake Michigan. And that is exactly why you cannot disappear, he replied. Noah looked surprised. You want me to go back? Vincent turned to face him. If you suddenly vanish, Marcus will know we understand more then. We should. But if tomorrow appears completely ordinary, he will continue believing he still controls the situation. Noah considered the idea. It sounded risky, yet it also made sense. Then I go back to work as though nothing happened. Vincent nodded once. Not alone. Before Noah could ask another question, Anthony entered carrying a slim folder. We finished reviewing the historical records you requested, he said. Vincent accepted the folder and opened it immediately. Inside were copies of property records, archived corporate filings, and several photographs from nearly 20 years earlier. One image immediately caught Noah's attention. It showed the entrance of the same historical library where he worked today, except the building looked much newer. Standing near the front steps were Vincent's father, Noah's father, and a younger man whose face matched the old photograph from the envelope. They all knew each other, Noah whispered. Vincent slowly nodded. Long before either of us understood why. Anthony pointed toward one document clipped behind the photographs. There is something else. Vincent unfolded the page. It was an old partnership agreement signed by 3 names. The first belonged to Vincent's father. The second belonged to Noah's father. The third belonged to Charles Vail, the founder of Vail Holdings and Marcus Vail's father. Noah frowned. If our fathers worked together, why was everything hidden? Vincent continued reading until he reached the final paragraph. His expression changed. Because the partnership was never about business. Noah leaned closer. The document described the creation of a confidential archive intended to protect historical records donated by families who feared losing them forever. Financial accounts had only been established to maintain the collection privately. This was a preservation trust, Noah realized. Not an investment company. Vincent nodded. Someone transformed it into something completely different after my father passed away. Noah looked toward the brass key resting beside the documents. Then whatever is hidden inside the library may prove what this organization was originally meant to be. Vincent carefully placed the papers back into the folder, which also explains why someone wanted the envelope to reach us instead of destroying it. At that moment, Noah's phone vibrated on the desk. Both men looked at the screen. The message had arrived from an unknown number. There was no greeting, no signature, and no explanation. It contained only one sentence. Do not search the old reading room. The key belongs beneath the fireplace. Noah slowly looked up from the phone. No one should know we found the key. Vincent immediately checked the security logs. No alarms had been triggered, no cameras had recorded an intruder, and the study had remained sealed since Marcus left. Yet the anonymous message referred to information that had never been spoken outside the room. Vincent quietly picked up the brass key and turned it over beneath the desk lamp once more. On the reverse side, hidden beneath years of tarnish, another tiny engraving appeared that neither of them had noticed before. It consisted of only 3 carefully carved words. Bring them together. Morning sunlight spread across downtown Chicago as Noah stood outside the historical library, holding the small brass key inside his coat pocket while trying to convince himself that this looked like an ordinary workday. Vincent's black sport utility vehicle remained parked across the street, blending naturally into the morning traffic without drawing attention. He had insisted on staying nearby, but had also respected Noah's request to enter the library alone. If the anonymous message was telling the truth, whatever had been hidden beneath the old reading room fireplace had been waiting for years, perhaps even decades, for this exact moment. Noah unlocked the employee entrance and quietly made his way through the silent building before opening the restricted archive below the main floor. The familiar scent of aged paper immediately surrounded him. Every shelf, every preservation cabinet, and every handwritten catalog number suddenly carried a meaning he had never noticed before. He followed the coded references from the envelope until they led him back upstairs to the abandoned reading room. Dust floated through, the morning light pouring across the empty tables. The brass plate beside the fireplace displayed the same engraved symbol carved into the key. Noah knelt and carefully inserted the key into a nearly invisible opening hidden beneath the decorative frame. It turned smoothly without resistance. A quiet mechanical click echoed through the room, and a narrow compartment slowly opened inside the stone fireplace. Resting within was a sealed wooden case no larger than a jewelry box. Noah gently carried it to one of the reading tables before calling Vincent. Less than 10 minutes later, Vincent entered the room alone. Neither man spoke until the wooden case rested between them. On the inside of the lid, another handwritten message appeared in careful script. It read, "The archive was never created to protect wealth. It was created to protect truth." Inside the case lay original partnership records, letters exchanged between their fathers, and signed documents proving that the Preservation Trust had always existed to safeguard donated historical collections for public benefit. The financial structure had simply funded the mission. The records also documented how Charles Vale had agreed to protect the trust alongside Vincent's father and Noah's father before later generations lost sight of its original purpose. Marcus had inherited influence over the accounts, but the documents showed that the trust itself legally belonged to independent custodians rather than any single family. Vincent quietly closed the final folder and smiled with a sense of relief Noah had not seen before. "This changes everything," he said. "The truth was never hidden to protect power. It was hidden until the right people could restore it." Noah looked around the peaceful reading room and suddenly understood why his father had always spoken about patience whenever he asked questions as a child. Some stories really did need the right reader. Over the following weeks, Vincent worked with attorneys, archivists, and the board overseeing the historical collections to restore the trust exactly as it had originally been written. The preserved documents returned to professional care, the financial accounts were reorganized under independent supervision, and the library officially reopened the Forgotten Reading Room as part of a public historical exhibit honoring the founders who had protected knowledge instead of possessions. One quiet afternoon, Noah finished arranging the final display before stepping outside the library. Waiting beside the curb was the same black sport utility vehicle that had changed both of their lives. This time, every door stood unlocked. Vincent leaned against the open passenger door and smiled, not because he expected Noah to enter, but because the choice finally belonged entirely to him. Noah looked at the familiar vehicle, remembering the frightened Omega who had climbed into the wrong car during a storm, believing he had nowhere else to go. Then he smiled back, walked across the sidewalk, and chose to sit beside Vincent of his own free will. As the vehicle pulled away beneath a clear blue sky, Noah realized that the greatest surprise had never been finding the hidden envelope or solving a decades-old mystery. It had been discovering that one unexpected decision, made in a moment of fear, had quietly led both of them exactly where they were always meant to be.